Okay, so what I wanted to do is bring up the first Project Universe video in quite a while. I've more or less started over using a lot of the same ideas and techniques that I had before, but we're going to be doing some things differently, working in a different fashion. So the first part that I actually got done was the database, which is now entirely internal to the application rather than using an external set of files or a actual database. That part was relatively easy because it built off of techniques that I had used before, but after I got that done, what I wanted to move on to was NPCs, because NPCs give the game life, and when the player is moving around, having the NPCs running around doing their own thing, kind of, it's necessary in order to make it look like you're not alone in the universe. So, in this case, what we're looking at right now is an NPC test. Currently, there's 4 different types of NPCs planned, 3 of which actually are in existence now. There's merchants, police, miners, and pirates. Currently, pirates are the only ones that haven't been worked on because they will rely primarily on combat, and I haven't even gone near combat. So what we've got here is a test for how miners, merchants, and police will move around in a scene. So the 4 elements that are here on the screen in Unity represent 2 stations, a jump gate, and an asteroid belt. So the stations are where players and NPCs will dock. Jump gates are where players and NPCs will enter and leave the system. And asteroids are where miners will hang out until they're full, and then they return to a station to drop off their goods. So each of the different types of NPCs has their own movement pattern. For example, the merchants will jump into a station. They will travel to a station. I'm sorry, they'll jump into a system. They will travel to a station. They will dock for a time, and then they will leave the station and exit the sector through another jump gate, or the same jump gate they came through. Police will visit all of the important locations in the sector, which right now comprises stations and jump gates. And miners, as I said earlier, will hang out in an asteroid and mine until they're, quote, full, unquote, and then they will head back to a station to drop off what they've got, and they'll eventually return to the asteroid to continue their work. So, just to, it's a little difficult to kind of see here in this representation, especially since I haven't differentiated any of the different types of NPCs from one another, but we'll step through it and we'll point out what's going on here and who's going where. So here on the left we have the scene. This is our working palette. We can move things around here. Right now we're in orthographic mode, but if we move to perspective mode, we can actually, get down to this level. Right now all of these elements are on the same plane, but the system is designed such that they could be at different heights, different depths, and so on and so forth. It's not going to matter to the NPCs. So we will take a look really quick at how these work. Now these little pink dots that you see outside of the station and the jump gate, these are what I call egress points. And I call them egress points because it started with the jump gate. You will jump into a system, you'll come out of the jump gate at the egress point. The other points at the stations are where the NPCs will spawn after, more or less they're leaving the station. So these are spawn points, just think of them like that. They do not show up actually once the game is played. They're only displayed here in pink, so I can get an idea about which way it's facing. So just to give an example, we're going to run it here. And if you keep an eye both on the scene and the game, you'll see essentially the same thing. So just to pause real quick so we can get a look at what we're seeing here. This guy right here is a police, and this guy also here is police. Now, when you enter the sector, they're the first things that start moving, because police are constantly patrolling, so they will continually bounce between the stations and the jump gates. These two squares up here are miners. Now, what you don't see here is the asteroid. Now, the asteroid right now is currently a set of spheres attached together, and what happens is when the scene begins, the asteroid script will create different egress points around it, and these are dynamic spawn points for the miners, because the miners are kind of difficult. If we just let them spawn where they wanted to, they'd probably end up bunching up and hanging out on top of one another. And it's also very important to have distinct locations for them to return to after they leave the station, so that they don't just kind of, you know, pig pile on one another. So the miners will stay here for a while. The police will bounce between their patrol routes. So right now, I mean, there's kind of crappy movement for the police, because obviously I don't have models going on, but eventually what I need to do is to get them to smoothly turn so that they'll it looks like they're actually flying between different locations and not just, you know, pinballing. This guy right here that just came in through the jump gate, this is a merchant. So he came in through the jump gate and he's heading over here to this station. So once he gets there, he's going to vanish. And what he's doing in theory right now is purchasing, buying and selling. We also have another merchant now who came in through the jump gate. So he's going to dock at that station. So right now we have a total of 20 different a total of 10 potential merchants that can exist in this scene, and they're pulled from a pool, so we will never have more than 10. We've also got 2 police and 2 miners. This can be set per sector. This can be set dynamically, but this is the information that controls how many of each will appear more or less in a scene. So this miner right here just left his asteroid, and he's headed down here to this station. This miner will be moving in a few more seconds, I bet, and he'll be going either to this station or to the other one. Yep, he's going to the same station. So let's see. So we got some. Okay, so this guy right here just came out of this station right here. So this is a merchant. He's done his business and he's headed back to the jump gate. Right now, what happens is when a merchant jumps out of the system, they are simply deactivated. They go back into the merchant pool, and each merchant actually is pretty generic. If you look over here, we've got our merchant information. His NPC name is Merchant Freighter, his ship name is Merchant Freighter, and he's a faction merchant. Ideally, what would happen would be that the merchants would all be named, and they would move from sector to sector, and you will encounter a merchant in one sector, and then head to another sector, and you'd see that same merchant. And the plan right now for a simple test is to get the merchants to essentially tap out some of the goods at each station that they dock at. All that's going to do for right now, however, is to mess with the numbers. There's going to be no persistence. They're not actually going to buy anything. But the eventual plan is to get the NPCs to purchase, to have an inventory, and to carry it throughout the system, you know, buying and selling, so that if a merchant is attacked, if a merchant is killed, then you may be able to scoop their items up from from deep space, as opposed to just spawning a random, you know, loot chest from where they died. So this actually is, I think, probably the 3rd refactoring of the code that I've done. It's gotten extremely streamlined from its original mess. And it works very well, aside from the police bouncing around like they're on a pool table, and aside from the fact that the merchants don't actually buy or sell anything, and the miners seem to get caught up here on the the asteroid rather than actually parking. Actually, this guy parked pretty nicely next to the asteroid. I think the other guy actually is above the asteroid. So we'll see. Yeah, as you can see, he's kind of in an angle. So if we were to look at that here, so here's our asteroid. There goes our miner. This guy's actually above this asteroid as opposed to next to it. So it's actually, it looks like he's doing, it looks like he's kind of on top of it, but in actuality he's not. So this is an example of my movement system, my NPC movement system so far. It's at a state right now which I'm happy with. I can kind of set this aside and say, okay, this is good, this does what I need it to do, and the next step is to get back to the to getting the player into here so you can actually fly around, and then once I have that, you'll be able to dock at a station and jump between sectors. So I have to get the jump gate system working as well. So look for those videos in the future, and I am keeping up. I've moved my development blog, kind of put the development blog to rest, and all of the new updates for this are at levelcapped.com. The game development has its own separate section of the site, which you can find through the navigation section at the top. So if you're interested in these videos, feel free to subscribe. I'm not going to bug you about it because you know how YouTube works. But thanks for watching.